Hello. So in the last video, we took a world from Blender with a table and an object with some things on it, and we imported a template into Godot. We then took our scene from Blender, exported that as a GLB file. We brought that into Godot and exported it as an a WebXR environment and published it through GitHub. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be tweaking our project a little bit. Most importantly, we're going to be making the three objects on the table in our scene grabbable, so you can pick them up and put them down. We're going to go over optimizing our materials for having less storage on the web with WebXR, and then use GitHub to update our site. So let's jump into it now. So here we have the Godot project screen. Um, and this is the project we're working on. And you can see it's called IISXR template, which is the name of the file we started with. And we're going to make a little tweak right now and just rename this, because if I want to use this template more in the future, it's going to get confusing. You can see I already have two documents that have the same name. So I will just name this Gregory Room 3 things on table, or you can just call it, VR for Artists Godot exercise with your name, whatever you want to call it. And I'll just hit rename, and now this is just going to be clear to work with. I'll just go ahead and open that. So here we are in our scene. So we've got our player here with their hands. We've got this grabbable ball as a demo item, which you may want to delete out of your scene. And then I have my room that I dropped into it. We still have the default background that was just part of this template, which we will also update as part of this. All right, so first let's make one of these vases grabbable. So the first thing we'll do is, you may have already made your scene local. As you can see, I have not yet here. So I can tell that this GLB is not local because it's got this little drop down here. And if I click on that, it gives me this warning that I can create a new inherited scene to edit. I can just open the GLB and edit it anyway, or I can cancel, which is what I'm going to do here. There is a way to set up our GLB as its own scene before going in, but for our purposes, I think making this local will be the best option. So if you haven't already done that, you just right click on room with 3 things, or whatever you called your GLB, and you scroll all the way down to this option, make local, and now you can see all the elements are in here. Now, I think this might be slightly different than the model I used in the previous video, or an earlier export, because I did not name things clearly here. So I can actually amend that right now, and it's a good idea to do so. So I can see the shutters are named fine. The room name is fine. The plane is okay, but I'm going to call it wood floor. And then for my 3 vases, which are all just named after the objects they were built out of, I'm just going to rename them vase 2, vase 3, so that the naming is clear and I know what I'm working with. So let's go ahead and make this first vase grabbable. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select main up here. I'm just going to switch this to the animation section just so we don't have to see all that text flying up there, because I think it's a little distracting. I'll actually drop that down. So sorry, that's not actually important. So let's get to the important steps here. So first thing we want to do is, in our main scene, we want to click on the node at the top, main, and then we want to go to scene here, and we want to make a new inherited scene. And here, now that that has happened, we want to carefully click on add-ons, Godot XR tools, and then I believe interactables, not interactables, objects. And there's this one here called pickable, TSCN, which is the shortcut, the extension for scene. So now we will click open, and we've got our scene. And before anything else, we want to be careful, because this is kind of like a template scene. And if we accidentally just hit save to keep our changes. We're going to affect the template. So here for scene, we're going to already go to save as, and I'm going to call it vase pickable and hit save. All right. So here we already have the script built in for an object that can be picked up. Here, I'll go back to the 3D view. And then we have a collision shape, which has a warning because the collision shape has no shape or anything defined to it, which is all fine. So here we're going to click on pickable object, so the root node of the scene, the top node. And here we'll select one of our vases. So I'll select the first one. And we're not going to need it in this hierarchy of room with things anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and press Control X and that's for cut, which means it's deleted the vase, but it's also copied it to the clipboard. So now we'll go to vase pickable and selecting the main node, we'll press Control V for paste. And here's our vase. And don't worry about what the lighting looks like in this scene because we just are worried about the geometry. So the vase is kind of off center, but our collision and our main node, well, the node describes everything. Our collision is centered. So ideally, you want to just keep everything in a scene that goes in other scenes. You want to just keep it all centered. So here for the vase, in the inspector node here, we go to transform, and we can see that the scale has some settings on it, which we want to leave alone, but the position is set for 0.855, 0.467, and we'll just hit this little kind of circle back arrow here, and that'll just reset it. So now the vase is right in the middle, right where we want it. So that looks good. And now we'll go to our collision shape. And right now there is no collision shape. And we can choose any of these shapes. So just to describe what these are really quickly, the ray shape's a little complex for this tutorial, but we could have it have a sphere collider, a cube, a capsule, a cylinder, and then we can also have a convex or a concave polygon shape around it, which is kind of like shrink wrapping it. In the case of this object, I think that the best collider is a box. And the reason I believe that is because even though this vase is kind of curvy and stuff on the bottom, I'm more interested in it just kind of landing and standing up when it falls. So having a flat bottom will be really helpful. We will have subsequent lessons where we learn how to make colliders that are really customized to the shape of the object, but for now we're just going to stick with the box, starting simple. So now I'm going to go and select the scale tool and scale this box down. So it's about the same size as the vase. And then I will move it up on the y-axis. Remember, in Blender, up and down is Z, but in a lot of programs, up and down is Y. And I'm just going to put the box so it kind of lines up with the bottom of the vase. Now, I could extend it a little further. And you can see I can either extend with these control points, which grab it both ways, or I can use just this dot. No, that doesn't work. So, I could extend this to be a little taller. So it really occupies the whole vase. I think that having this smaller collision at the bottom is okay. I think that even given that there's a range, even if you stick your hand in the top, you'll still be able to grab it. So we'll just go with that. So we've got this, it's called pickable vase. Now press Control S to save. And here we can see it in our scene hierarchy, pickable vase. So I'm going to go back to my main scene. Now I'll take pickable vase and I can drop it within this hierarchy of the room with 3 things, or I can just drop it into the main section. It shouldn't make too much of a difference. We'll drop it in the main section now. Second, we'll try that again. And there is our vase. So we can go ahead and put this on the table. So I'm going to move it on the Z-axis into the room. Then I'll move it up on the Y-axis. just going to get it in position back on the table. Now, if you want your exact position to be retained from the previous one, there are a number of ways to do that, but the easiest way would probably be to keep track of those numbers of the original position. Now, I really want to make sure this works, so I'm going to put this vase a little bit higher than the other ones, because I want to make sure that if this is programmed properly, when we simulate the scene, that vase should fall. So now that that's in place, I'll save the scene, Control S. We're saving in the main scene now. And now I will run the simulator. And this is assuming that in your project settings, you've already enabled the XR simulator, which you can get through the asset library if you're not using this template. So now we will hit play. And it warns me that I don't have a headset attached. And now the simulator should run. And you can see the vase certainly fell, as we hoped, but it fell on the floor. It didn't stay on the table. The ball is still there, everything's there, and that is actually to be expected. So the next step is we need to actually give the table a collider. And to do that, we need to find the table. Here it is, and we're going to add some other nodes to the table. So for the table, I could actually remove the table and turn it into its own scene and bring it back the same way we did with the vase, but I'm just going to work on it locally in this case, so right in the main scene. So I'm going to right-click on this and just hit Add a Child Node, or I can just press Control-A to add. And here we have the list, and I'm going to search static. There's static body 3D. Create. So now we have a static body created in this, and clicking on table again, I'm going to right-click again on it, add child node, and I'm going to add a collision node. So there is collision shape 3D, create. So now we have a collision and static body. So again, for the collision, we could make it shape just like the table, but I don't think we really need to. So we'll just go to box mesh for the collision, and we'll lift that up. And we'll scale it to be a larger box. Oh, whoops, I've totally misplaced that. Let me redo that from the beginning. So here we have our collision shape under this table, and we will lift it up. I was mixing up my Y and Z axes there. And we will add a box shape to it. And the box shape, we will scale that out so we can see that box around the table. And then I'll press scale it again vertically and move that down so it kind of matches up with the surface of the table. So there we've got a little box collider shaped like a table. And let's see what our warning is here. So this is actually just telling us that our nodes are out of order. So we're going to fix that very quickly. We're going to take static body 3D, and we're going to add the word table to the end of it so we can keep track. And we're going to go ahead and bring that all the way up to the top of room with things. And here is static body table. And then we'll drop the collision shape inside it, and we'll drop the table inside it. So now our hierarchy is in the right order. And this says a non-uniformly collision shape. Scaled collision shape might give us some trouble, but I think it's going to be fine. So there we go. We've got a static body, and inside it we have our collision, and we have our actual mesh of the table. So let's test this. So there you go. The bottle has fallen on the table. And notice, let me see if I remember how to crouch, that the other objects haven't fallen on the table. And that's because they don't have any physics or grabbability to them. So we'll just get closer to that. And right now, we only have grab capability in the right hand. So I'll press the letter E to move our right hand towards that object. I'll grab it. I think we need to get a little closer to it still. So we'll get a little closer. E. We'll crouch down and grab the object with a right click, and you can see I can pick it up. And if I let go of the right click, falls again and lands on the table. So the graphics look a little funky in this simulator, but in actual VR, it will work well. And just to recap, if you don't remember from the XR simulator, the arrow keys will serve to kind of rotate your whole body around. WASD work to move you like the left stick would. And then if you hold down the letter E, you're moving around the right hand. If you hold down the letter Q, you're moving around the left hand. If you hold down Q and press 1, well, if you hold down Q and press 2, that'll jump. If you hold down Q and press 1, it'll crouch. And if you hold down E and press 1, you will also crouch and uncrouch, and 2 will make you jump. So 1, 2 are like the A, B buttons, X, Y buttons, and E and Q lock to your hand. All right, so we'll close that. So that is set up now. So now we can essentially just repeat this process for the next few. And a way we can kind of speed that up a little bit is we've got this pickable vase scene here already. So there it is, our vase. And I can click open. So here's our vase and our collision shape. So we have that mostly set up already. So now from there, I can just import the other meshes and save these again. And I'll show you what I mean. So going back to main, I'll go to vase number 2 and maybe vase number 3. And I'll press Control X and delete both of them. And then in the pickable section, I'm going to go ahead and press Control V. So now all of our vases are in this now, which is a little confusing, but you'll see how we can work with this. So we're going to actually just save these. So I'll go Scene. We're going to want to change the name of these two at the node because that's how it'll appear in the. So I'm going to call this one Vase 2. And I know that they're all kind of quirky looking. We're going to tweak them in a minute. And I'll do Scene, Save Scene As, Pickable Vase 2. We want to, ideally, it looks like I saved this one in the add-on section, which we were still able to find it, but we want to actually go up in the hierarchy all the way to our main section. I guess I must have saved it in the wrong place when I was practicing. So here we'll save Pickable Vase 2. And then we're going to go ahead and rename this to 3. And we'll go to Scene again and save Scene As. And here in the main section, we'll call it Pickable Vase 3. We'll hit Save. And I know this seems a little counterintuitive, but we're just going to place them all with the first vase and then we'll tweak them. So I'm going to hide the meshes for the other two. I guess I'll also center them. So for the other two, we will reset the position transform again. So now all the vases are just kind of squished on top of each other. We'll just leave it like that. That'll be okay. So here for vase 3, I'll hit save. And for vase 2, we can double click on that. We'll do the same thing. I probably should just put those in the same place before that, but whatever. So we'll go and reset the transform on that one. And then we'll do the same thing for this one. And save that too. So really, I should have stacked them all on top of each other before saving it under all the names. So now going back to our main scene, we're going to put our other vases back in the scene. So here you have Pickable Vase, and then we have 2 and 3 ready to go. So we'll just drop those into the scene. So we'll put 2. And we'll put 3. Now there they are. So I'll select both of them at the same time, and I'll move them under the table, and then I'll move them over the table. I'll take vase number 3, and I'll move that next door. So now we've got our vases in place. We could have actually just started with these super vases, but I wanted you to see the workflow for just one. So now for vase 2, we'll hit this little movie thing, or I don't know what that icon, sorry, let me go back. That icon here, which kind of looks like a lights, camera, action thing for the film, which lets us inspect that scene. So here for vase 2, we're just gonna go ahead. We already have our collision shape set up. So for vase 2, we're just gonna go ahead and delete vase 1 and delete vase 3. So we just have 2 in there, and the position on it looks good. The collision looks good, so we'll just hit save. If we look at main, we can see that that vase looks normal now. So now we'll go to vase number 3 and do the same thing. And the reason we're stacking them all up in here is just to save us work of not having to set the collision multiple times. So for vase number 3, we'll delete number 2, number 1. And you can see this one is actually, for whatever reason, this one is hanging lower, but so it's hanging below the collision shape, which isn't great. So we will select the mesh on this one and then just move that up. And now we can see the collision shape is back right in the bottom of the vase, and we'll save that too. It's important that we did the save as function first, otherwise we'll just be resaving the same vase, and we'll just be affecting all 3 with every move. So now if we go back to main scene, we've got our 3 vases here. And if we hit play to run our inspector, they should all be on the table. So now you can see here we are at the scene. We can walk right up to the table. I'll take my hand and try to pick up the vase, no problem. That vase, no problem. Pick that one, maybe get it knock the other vases off with it, just kind of have some fun, throw it out there. Now it does go through the walls because the walls aren't set up as collisions, but you can set them up with static bodies just as easily as the table. So I'll press escape, and then I'll close this window because our simulation was effective. So this will be ready for VR. So now we're going to go over a couple more things. So we've got our objects pickable, but let's go over making a custom background for our scene. So for that, I'm actually going to use this photograph as a new background. So this is a photo, a 360 photo that I took in a crater in a volcano in Hawaii. So let's use that. So I'm going to take this image and just drag it right into our asset section here. Let go. And there you go. It's importing the asset. So now we have, I think that JPEG was just called output. There it is. And now we're going to set that up as our new background. So here in our various items in our scene outliner here, we've got world environment. So we'll click that. And here we have sky. So, and under here is another sky. So we'll click this one. And here it says panorama sky material. We'll click that too. And now we can see there's our sky image. And now that we have that, we can simply, something's acting a little buggy, one moment. Sometimes when you import a new asset, it doesn't let you drag it around right away. But if that's the case, just give it a moment and it'll be okay. So we'll click on this output JPEG here, and I'll drag that all the way to this image here. And when I drop it, there we go. We now have the view of this crater all around us. So that is set too. So before we export this, we're going to get into something slightly more advanced, which is here in the scene section, we also can click on this import setting. And you can see here are all the images involved in our scene. So we've got some image materials related to that kind of orb ball that's sitting in the scene. And then we have our various image materials related to related to our textures on the room. So I'm going to select all of these, and we might have to do it one by one. And here for the mode where it says VRAM compressed, I'm actually going to change it to lossy and click re-import. And I don't know if it actually let us do it. Looks like it did do it to all of them, so that's great. And then we're also going to click on these JPEGs here. So all the JPEGs. Looks like for whatever reason, well, these are already set to lossy, so I've already adjusted those. And then for this one here, we're also going to set it to lossy. So lossy compression is the name of the game with JPEGs and WebP files. This VRAM compressed format, it actually makes the material file significantly larger for storage, but more efficient for the GPU to load. And that is great if you're making a PC VR game that can be like huge, like 17 gigabyte download file or something. But for WebXR, if our assets have a really large file size, it's going to affect the time it takes to load the scene in the first place because it's loading online and not off local storage. And also, it might actually cause us to hit storage limits before we can even update our scene. So now that we've set those things, we've done all the things for this exercise. We'll go to Project, Export. We'll choose WebXR again. And just making sure this is, that has a setting from the past. Don't worry about that. So we'll go to Export Project and make sure we're exporting it in the same folder. And same name, we turn off debug as we did before, we hit save, and we will overwrite it. And now we should see that we have updates here in GitHub for our scenes. So we'll hit update and commit to main, push origin, and your VR scene will be updated. So you'll have a different background. The file size should be a little smaller, and you will be able to pick up the objects on your table in VR. So I look forward to seeing everyone's scenes, and good luck.